Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Today I'm going to be starting my Snapdragons. I'm going to be starting this package of Rocket Mix Snapdragons. These say to start them 8 to 10 weeks before transplanting out. Now Snapdragons are fairly cold tolerant, and if you have a protected place in your yard, you might be able to get away with putting them out a little bit sooner than your average last frost date. It always depends on the weather, and you always have to be prepared to pull them in if you get a cold snap. But to me, it's worth giving it a try to start them just a little bit early. So that's what I'm going to be doing with these. Now, speaking of starting them early, I started these. This is a mini snap mix. And I started these January 14th. So it is now February 28th. So these have been going for like a month and a half. And they started out with just multi-sowing in a small little pack like this. And just a couple of days ago, I broke each of these little packs in half. Actually, a few weeks before that, I thinned them out because they were sown really heavy. Snapdragon seeds are very tiny, so they can be sown a little bit heavy very easily. So I went in and actually thinned these out. And then I had several trays like this, and a week or two ago I went and I took them and I split each of these packs in half. I just took the whole pack of soil, the whole root mass there, out of each of these little cells, and I just literally pulled it apart. And I made an indent in some soil in these larger containers, and I put 1/2 of each of these cells into here. So now I have, on average, 2 to 3 plants in each of these a little bit larger cells. And they're growing along here nicely. They're under grow lights. The grow lights are on, people always ask me, the grow lights are on about 16 hours a day. So they get about 8 hours of darkness and then 16 hours of light. And I'm actually hoping to get these out very, very early, just right by my front door where it's very protected. And I might still have to be covering them up at night and maybe even some days. But I just wanted to give it a try. I'm forcing some tulips in pots that I'm hoping to put out there about that time in about a month here. And I'm hoping that these will have some blooms on them, or blooms right around the corner around that time, so I can put these in with the tulips and have a really nice display. So fingers crossed that's what's going to happen with these, and that's why they're started so early. Normally I wouldn't recommend starting them that early, but a few weeks earlier than your average last frost date, a recommendation is, to me, a good bet with these. So like I said, these say on the back 8 to 10 weeks before transplanting out. And that's not, like, a lot of times they'll say before your average last frost date. And when they say before transplanting, then you need to kind of research what that means for that particular plant. Some plants need to be transplanted a few weeks after your average last frost date, and some can be transplanted a few weeks before. And for these, it's usually pretty safe to put them out a little bit before your average last frost date. So like I said, I'm 12 weeks out from mine right now, and I'm going to be getting these started. You can see from the growth on these other ones that they don't really grow super fast. You know, these are about 6 weeks old. I have pinched some of them back, but Snapdragons aren't a really fast grower. So let's get these in the ground and I'll show you how I do it. So this Snapdragon is supposed to be a nice tall upright Snapdragon mix. It's supposed to be like 30 to 36 inches tall. And so they're also supposed to have those nice long stems, and they're good for cutting. So that's what my goal is with these, is to be able to use them as a bit of a cut flower and tuck them into my perennial flower beds. Nice tall plants, annuals like that, are really easy to pop into a flower bed or a garden space. So I just have my all-purpose growing mix here. Some people will tell you have to use a seed starting mix when starting seeds. I say, nah, I can't be bothered. This is just a peat moss and perlite mix. It's pretty fine already, but I've used a lot rougher mixes than that. Some regular potting mixes will have chunks like this or larger in them. Can you see that? So when I come across kind of bigger pieces like that, I just toss them to the side. Really the biggest thing is just having them out of your way at the top where the seeds are going. You know, if they're down the bottom of the tray, it doesn't really matter. So I don't worry too much unless I'm at the top and there's a big stick or something. And then I'll worry more. But, so I'm just gonna, when I do this, it just helps to settle the soil in so there's no air pockets, because when roots hit a pocket of air, it's just pretty much death. They don't like that. They want to be growing in soil, not air. Now I'm filling these pretty much to the top because, like I said earlier, Snapdragon seeds are very, very fine, and they actually like light to germinate, so I'm not going to need to be covering on top. And because they are so fine, you'll see they are actually in a little container inside the envelope. I don't know if you can see how small those are there. So these little cells here, they're 9 per tray, so I have 18 cells, and I'm not sure how many seeds I'm going to have here. They're very tiny. There's a couple ways that you can do this with small seeds. Some people like to take like a toothpick, or in this case I just have a long skewer. You wet the end, and if I can find it here, I don't know if you can see, I have just the smallest little seed right on the end, and then they just tap it into the soil and the seed has come off. So if you don't have very many seeds, that might be the method that you want to do. For now, I'm just taking one seed, putting it in each cell because I'm not sure how many I have. And then, where that one got 2 on it. And then once I've done them all, I'll go back if I have more seeds and put more in each cell. This can be a little bit tricky to do, and you do run the risk of dropping the seed, so if you're really worried about a stray seed getting mixed in your potting mix, you might not want to be doing this over your extra mix like I am. Now, when my fingernails are longer, I often will just use my fingernail to pick one up, but you can also just put a couple between your fingers like this in a little pinch, and then I just kind of do this till I feel one fall out. And you'll probably wind up seeding a little bit thicker that way. But it's just another way that you can do it. Looks like I had about 28, maybe 30 seeds there, and they're all in their little tray. I'm just going to go through and very gently just pat the top of the soil surface just to make sure that that seed has contact with the soil. Another way you could do this is to get just a spray bottle and just give them a good misting. This soil is quite damp already, so I don't want to, it's not actually soil, it's just a growing medium, but it's quite damp already, so I don't actually want to be adding a lot more moisture to it. And then something I've started doing in the last few years, and I've learned doesn't really hurt seeds that need light to germinate if you do it lightly, is to add a little vermiculite on top. So with the seeds that need light to germinate, I put a very fine dusting of vermiculite on top. I don't mean fine vermiculite, though I have used fine vermiculite, but I just mean that I'm not completely covering the soil. So like that. What the vermiculite does is it helps to hold moisture on the soil. So, and you can tell when it's damp or not, so it's easy to check if your seedlings are damp. So now that I have the vermiculite on, I am going to go in with a little bit of a spray just to dampen that vermiculite. But like I said, my soil is quite damp already, so I won't be getting them too wet, because you don't want those tiny little seeds to rot. These are going to get labeled, and I always like to put the variety, the type of plant, and the date. So the tags are a really nice size to fit in these trays and still be under a humidity dome that'll go on top there. These plants don't need any bottom heat or anything to start, they just need lights. So there's my rocket mix snapdragons all planted up and ready to go under my grow lights. If you didn't have grow lights, a nice bright south or west facing window would probably do you for these. Just make sure they get lots of light, or even a nice bright cool light, like a fluorescent light or something put on top. You don't want one that gives off a yellow light, you want one that gives off a very white or kind of bluish hue. And if you're not using an actual grow light, you're going to want it pretty close just to make sure it's really nice and bright on the plants. So we're just going to put them in with that humidity dome on top under the lights and wait for sprouts.